Welcome to Talks with Tawanda, from existing to living in God's grace, the podcast for healing, hope, and hustle. I'm Coach Tawanda, a personal development coach, author, speaker, and survivor, on a mission to help others release shame, own your story, and move into purpose. This is a safe space for deep conversations, life lessons, and real change. What makes you think you're not worth being loved? How could you allow another to keep you from the blessings from up above? Why did you allow yourself to be treated with so much disrespect when it was you that God chose to be who you are, and it's not the place of others to tear you apart? Because He said He loves you, it's not meant for Him to be put above you, allowing Him to pour life in you, mistreating and abusing you, suffocating you as if His life had more existence than yours, not taking the time to understand your worth. What makes you think you're not worth being loved? Did you really think that you were not worth being loved? Well, how could you place yourself in a position of loving someone else if you did not have enough courage to love even yourself? Blame him? No, why? You allowed yourself to be fooled by the disguise, the many lies, not taking the time to realize that what lies between those thighs is not enough to keep him from making you cry, not wanting to understand yourself before trying to understand someone else, crying and blaming him for this pain, wanting him to explain this insane feeling that's rushing through your veins, not grasping the fact that this is all a game, only for him to see how many hearts he can claim. In here, you have to try to maintain as you try to explain the question that still remains. What makes you think you're not worth being loved? I remember sitting writing that poem, a letter to her. It was a letter to myself. It was my situation, a situation that I was in that a lot of women was able to relate to. So I wrote this years ago. I remember being in my first real toxic relationship. Um, it was a roller coaster ride. It was filled with a lot of unnecessary drama, but it also was filled with a lot of lessons. Throughout that moment, I had to learn something about myself. And the one thing that I had to learn about myself was what made me think I wasn't worth being loved, because the attention and the situation that I was in was not displaying love. And where I came from, a situation where love was not displayed, it was very easy for me to enter into those relationships. But I knew deep down inside it was something more that I was destined for, but I wasn't quite yet there. But I wasn't quite there yet, at least not when I wrote this. So I was sitting in, I was in a relationship where there was stealing, there was lying, there was mental abuse, that was, it was just abusive. It was not nice. It was a lot of toxic, controlling, just things of that nature. And again, where I realized it, I think a part of me was so used to having that environment from my household. It felt comfortable, but it was uncomfortable at the same time. And at this point in time, I have kids. I have two now, plus raising my nephew. And I remember sitting to myself saying, Tawanda, is this the relationship you would want for your kids? Is this the relationship you would want for your daughter? Is this how you would like your son, or be okay with your sons treating another woman? So you have a decision to make. And I remember asking myself, Tawanda, what is it? What is it that have you in this situation, fighting to get out but not moving? And the one thing that came to mind in that moment was, do you really love yourself? How do you feel about yourself? What are the thoughts that you have when it comes down to self? Who are you? Those was questions that I had to ask for myself. Well, those are questions I had to ask myself. I had to come to realization I could not blame that man no more. See, I had sat for a while in that relationship, and I blamed him. Oh, he did this and he did that. Wanting him to fix the issue, not understanding that it was something within me that needed to be fixed. I was broken. I was broken, and I allowed brokenness into a broken space. There was no way to heal that space. There was no way to fix that space. What I needed to do was leave. I remember sitting and when I wrote the letter to her, to myself, I had some thinking to do. When I read it, I had questions that I had to needed to ask and I needed answers to because I know and I knew that that's not the life that I wanted. I didn't want that for my daughter. I didn't want that for my sons. I didn't want it for myself. I had to make a decision and it was hard. It was hard because see, I had went through the stages of abandonment and abuse and at this point in life I just wanted somebody to love me, but I also had to realize that in order for somebody else to love me properly, that I had to be in position to love myself. And what I was receiving in the moments was the thoughts that I had of myself thinking I was unworthy. Sometimes we end up in situations because of circumstances. Sometimes we end up in situations being blinded or whatever. It can be numerous of different reasons why. But although we end up in those situations, does not mean that we have to stay in those situations. So you need to ask yourself, what am I worth? Who am I? What do I deserve? What do I want? What do I need? Going through that relationship broke me. It broke me in pieces that I didn't even know existed. It broke me. And it was a lot of rebuilding of life. And even after leaving that situation, that relationship, the toxicity in that space, I had a lot of healing to do. I had a lot of growing to do, but it was kind of hard because there was still an attachment there. We had a child. It wasn't as easy up and just leaving or, moving away or disappearing. Not that I thought in that moment until leaving that relationship. After I wrote that letter, I remember a few days later, I had to make a decision. Some may have made it that same day, but I'm telling you, it was a few days later when I had to make a decision. It could be fast enough for most and slow enough for others, but it was my life. And that was the season I was in. And I made a decision that this is not what I wanted. I wanted something better. I wanted something different. I remember the prayers I had prayed earlier on, and it resembled. Now, I didn't pray for anything toxic, but I also didn't pray for anything healthy. I prayed for a situation. I prayed for somebody to love me. Then I had to understand that the person that I wanted to love me, he was still struggling with loving himself. He was still struggling with understanding what that was. And here it is. I have somebody that's struggling to understand what love is. And guess what? I'm also struggling too. So where can I blame him? Yes, I wanted him to be kind. I wanted him to be nice. I wanted him to be the provider. I wanted him to be the person that I can rely on, the place where I felt safe. But I was actually requiring that from somebody else without actually setting the boundaries and the standards for myself. One thing I learned throughout this time and past time is allow myself the space and time to heal. Where I didn't travel into a lot of different relationships at this point, that was my second marriage. So I had been in a few relationships, but none as toxic as the one that I entered into in that moment. I had to realize that I deserved better. I had to realize that I wanted better. But wanting better and knowing what it is you want, that's a different thing. We want better, but what is it that we want? So something I never learned growing up was setting boundaries. I couldn't set boundaries in my household because the boundary was whatever you're told, whatever I think, whatever I feel, it's just what it is. So even if it hurt you, even if I'm wrong, even if it's not fair, it is what it is. So there was no boundaries. There was no safe space to be able to voice when something hurt or didn't hurt. There was not a safe space to be able to just express myself. My feelings didn't matter, is what I was often told. So going into this relationship, I battled with that a lot. I battled with wanting to say no, but being afraid to say no because my feelings didn't matter. I wanted to say no, this is not going to work for me, but being afraid to say no because I'm a fearing that I was going to be in trouble. I remember trying to leave this space, trying to relieve this relationship. And for 4 years after, it was stalking, it was harassing, it was my no was not if my no felt weak, but then I realized standing on my no was strong. It was the strength that I needed. And although it had to play itself out, I think it was a new environment for the both of us. He wasn't used to hearing no, and I wasn't used to saying no. So here it is in this space where I had to stand stern. I had to continue to remind myself. I looked in the mirror, I wrote sticky notes, and this is just being honest. This is just my truth. This is my story. This is my testimony. I had to really put myself in position to put things around me, affirmations. I had to speak life into self because I was dead. Being in that relationship, before entering in that relationship, I was dying. And getting into that relationship, I felt dead. I felt so much anxiety, so much stress, so much unworthiness. I felt so much. Am I saying at all times was bad? No. There were some good moments that seemed good. Those moments that, you just spray a little air freshener on the room smell like shit, but you're just gonna spray a little air freshener in there. That's what it was like. The message in that for me was again to love myself, be patient with myself, understand who I was and what I truly wanted. And I didn't give a damn about who approved of it and who didn't. It wasn't theirs to approve. We are sometimes stuck in relationships wanting this person to be for us who we are afraid to be for ourselves. I had the expectations of him loving me where I was failing to love myself. I had the expectations of him respecting me where I failed to respect myself. I had the expectations of him valuing me where I failed to value myself. I had the expectations of him providing safety and security where I failed to safely secure myself. One thing I was able to do after writing this is open up my eyes. And one thing I was able to do was to understand me just a little bit more because I still had a road to travel. Because now I'm awakened. I'm awakened to the habits that I've created for myself. I'm awakened to the patterns that I've allowed myself to get into. I think I should have had stopped the time before, but I did not stop to allow myself to heal. I entered into this relationship being broken from a next from another relationship. Well, I entered into that relationship being broken from another relationship. And I entered into that relationship being broken from home. I never healed myself or allowed myself the space to heal from the broken home. And being in that broken home and leaving that broken home without the proper love tools and understanding, I entered into spaces that was not conducive for my growth, not my healing, not my mindset. I was awakened in that moment. I had a little vision of like, this is not okay. Intuition was kicking in, like, wait a minute, pump your brakes. But I was awakened in that moment. When I read back to myself what I wrote, I understood then. Tawanda, this is all about you. You're trying to love this man and you're wanting this man to love you, and you don't even love yourself properly. You're not even taking care of yourself properly, and that's mentally, physically. Whatever it was, I knew that I was not 100% there. I was trying to pour out of a cup that barely had 20% in it. In that moment, I had to be transparent in that moment with myself, and it hurt. It hurt because I allowed myself in that situation. It hurt because I allowed that man to be in a position to think that he was some type of superior over my space. I allowed it. I allowed it because I felt like if I just stood still, maybe he'll do right. If I just tried to love him a little bit more, maybe it'll just work itself out. And then it's crazy because the little piece of love that I thought I had for myself, I was willing to give it away, knowing that I didn't even have enough to sustain myself. Sometimes we are entering into relationships unhealed. We are entering into relationships wanting someone else to save us from what we really need to be saving ourselves from. We are entering into relationships not understanding who we are and the purpose of us being there. That was one thing I had to understand. Now, don't get me wrong, and there's so much more for me to tell, but it didn't end there. That was the beginning. It was the beginning of me realizing that I wanted more. But now I got to realize what that more is. It took some real deep soul searching. It took some getting off to myself type situation. I realized that when I left the marriage, I was okay. I was okay with leaving the marriage. I was working on me, I was working on healing, but then I had a whole stretch of time where that was I just couldn't get rid of this person. And it wasn't so much that I had a child by the person. It was so much that the person just wasn't getting it. He wanted me to love him, but again, he was in the same situation that I was in. We didn't have enough love for ourselves to be given to someone else. We didn't understand ourselves trying to understand someone else. So I couldn't go back. And that was anger. That was discomfort. That was stalking. It was harassment. It was now I'm away from it. And so I'm not sitting in it fearful, but I'm out of it fearful. What's the next move? And sometimes I feel that I was more fearful of myself than him because I had something to protect. I had children. There was a lot of close calls in there. Anger was boiling up inside of me to where I started to despise this person. I was hating this person. So here it is. I'm trying to heal, but another issue I have on top of me because I could have just walked away from that situation as I did and been okay if I never heard from that person again, whether we had a child or not. However, that would have unfolded, then allow it to unfold. But that's not the cards that I was dealt. I had to be tested. I was tested in that. Is she gonna go back? Is she gonna give up? Is she gonna stand her ground? And I stood it. I stood it because I remember a moment of time in that relationship where we had separated and the stalking and harassment was there, and that's what drew me back into it. It was just not leaving me alone. And I'll be honest with you, I remember having a thought that said, I may as well get with this person, go ahead and marry him because if I don't, he's gonna kill me. Then I got into the marriage and I said, now I'm here and I still feel like I'm dying. I'd rather have been dead out of the relationship than entered the relationship. And that's a decision I had to make. So once I took that moment where I went back, I remember it was 6 months after our marriage, almost 6 months after the marriage, I said, I'm done. It's over. I don't, I want to walk away scared. Do it scared. Do it unsure. Do it nervous. Do it hurt. Do it however the hell you got to do it. Just do it. Don't allow yourself to sit in a space, a relationship that you know is not feeding your intercore in a positive way. Don't allow yourself to sit in a space knowing that there's so many things within that space that is unhealthy, but yet we still sit there. Try that shit with food. If you want to have something in your life that's unhealthy, try it with food. Don't try it with the man. Don't try it with the woman. Until we heal ourselves, we would allow ourselves to continue to be in broken relationship. And another part of that healing journey for myself was where does it really hurt? I had to go back to realize where it hurt so that I can heal that little girl. It was a little girl in me that was crying out for attention. A little girl in me that was crying out to be helped. A little girl in me crying out to be provided for. There was a little girl in me just wanted somebody to love me and tell me that it was going to be okay. That little girl, I love her to death. I love her even more now than I did then because I didn't understand her. I had to understand the little girl inside of me. And I understood that once I understood her and once I start loving on her, then I can make a decision to say, okay, it's okay. It's okay. I'm okay to be in this relationship. This relationship will work for me. This space will not will work for me. And if If there's something within that that didn't work, I was okay with being by myself. But I had to heal the little girl in me. Some of us walking around and the little girl in us is hurt. She's all discombobulated. I had to give the little girl permission. I had to tell her it was okay. So I want to tell you the same thing. And this is it, that it's okay. That this is okay. You can get through this. Walk away now if it means saving your life. Because saving your life within that situation just won't happen. And that helped me come from being in in existing space to living in God's grace. I needed to love myself. The somebody that I needed was myself. I needed the adult me to love the child me so we could be on the same frequency. We can be on the same, have the same understanding so that then I can invite proper love in my life. And whether that was friendships, relationships, family, or whomever, I had to be able to determine what love looked like and understanding that it's not a word. It's a word, but it's just not a word. It's just not something to be said. It has action behind it. If love don't have actions that show kindness, that show humbleness, that show compassion, that show love and protection, there's no space for it in my life. I was hurt as a little girl, and no one ever told me how to heal her or that I needed to heal her. I was just told, oh, just move along, get over it. Oh, it'll be okay. Oh, that was the past. The past will continue to walk with you unless you address the past and the parts of it that hurts. The pain will continue to travel unless you address it. So I want to leave with you now. If there's someone or anyone at the sound of my voice have been touched at some point for whatever reason, have felt themselves in a similar situation, hey, reach out to me and let's talk about it. But until then, Where Does It Really Hurt by Coach Tawanda. You can find that in the link in my bio here. And go ahead and get a copy so that you can start your journey of healing. But not only that, go ahead and take the steps for yourself to understand who you are, what you're needing, what you're lacking so that you can refill it and allow yourself to be in a position to love yourself so that you're open to be loved by someone else. Until next time, enjoy your healing journey.